Hey everyone. Welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got a really awesome guest today. He has over 30 years experience pioneering creative solutions and strategies in emerging mediums, from Fortune 500 interactive marketing solutions to virtual reality theme park rides. Please join me in welcoming Joel Hladecek. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you.
You ready for 20 questions?
I hope so. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Well, for one thing, I think I have to update my bio because I've done a lot since then. But I'm the chief worldwide. Sorry, can you edit this, by the way?
Absolutely.
Okay, even though I'd have to edit that. I'm the worldwide creative officer at EF Education First. So I oversee creative for all the company across all media and all consumer touch points. But of course, we have a lot of people working in EF all over the world. And so it's impossible for me to oversee everything. We've just got a lot of great people working there. And, my job is just to help ensure that everything that gets done is of the highest possible quality. And we also establish all the primary brands and branding for the company.
Great. And just a note for our audience, Joel and I met when I was on a business trip to London to meet Joel over 10 years ago now. Number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
So anytime you're approaching the problem of creative work, and obviously that's my area, I think that your work has to be exceptional in some way. It can't be typical. There's got to be something about it that's exceptional. It can't be everything. If it's a film, maybe the editing is just unbelievable, or maybe the audio work in your interactive piece is insane, or whatever. But you've got to have some element that is truly special. Otherwise, what are you doing? What's the point, right? And if you can have more than one thing be exceptional, all the better. But you must have at least one element in your piece be great, and people will remember that. I think the other thing that fundamentally makes me different is that I work so often, like so many of us do, in a technical domain as an artist, and I think there's a trap in the technical world. I often say that technical advancements are not creative solutions. Meaning that, let's say you're working with your tool and you do it all the time and you're pretty good at it, and then there's some new feature that comes out that lets you do this whole other really cool thing, and what usually happens is, in short order, everybody does that thing. And but so the novelty of this new technical thing is something that must be pushed away. I think that it's just a trap, and it makes your work weak. Everybody's going to do that thing, and it requires no imagination to do that thing at face value. What's much more interesting is to do something unusual with that new tool, something more mature. And the way I get to that solution is by imagining that this new tool, whatever it is 5 years old. So I imagine myself projecting forward into the future and looking back on this tool. It's been around for 5 years in my imagination. And at that point, whatever it was that I was about to do that made me excited, a million people have done, right? Everyone's done it. It's been done. In fact, 5-year future me is bored stiff with the idea of doing that thing. It's stupid. People have written blog posts about it by now and said, "Oh, if I see another one of those things that do blank, I'm gonna eat my hat." So in that world, what would you do with that tool? At that point, what would you do if all that stuff has been done? And you'll find yourself looking for more mature uses of it. In fact, you might even not use it at all. And I connect this, I liken this to, I worked for years doing special effects in feature film. And I remember when Jurassic Park came out, and that fundamentally changed the effects industry, because all of a sudden we weren't just rendering buildings and things and rocks. We were creating living creatures, which was the real end all be all in terms of CG imagery. And almost immediately after Jurassic Park, you had a whole slew of movies come out that I call this the age of the impossible image. Everyone was so excited about having this incredible new tool where we could create creatures and we could create vast armies that across these massive landscapes that run in towards each other, and then they collide in this big clash. And it was stuff that you could just never do before because it was constructively prohibitive. All of a sudden we could do it, and everybody did. When you see those kinds of shots in movies today, it's a little bit boring, and it can't be about that. A few years after Jurassic Park came out, another movie came out after all this slew of movies that were based on the impossible image. And that movie was The Social Network. And in that movie, that also had some use of CG imagery. But there, it was just used to make the same actor look like twins. And when I saw the movie, I had no idea. I didn't know Armie Hammer. I didn't know the actor. I saw the movie and I thought, wow, they found two very talented twins, you know. But in fact, that was the same actor playing both roles. And none of us had any idea when we watched the movie that that's what was happening. That's a much more mature use of the medium. It was helping tell a story. It wasn't just saying, wow, look at me. And I think that's true about any new technical advancement in the creative world. You've got to find that more mature use of it and do something more sophisticated, because everybody else in the world is going to do that stupid novelty, dumb thing with it. So don't be one of those people.
Nice, that's great advice. Just one more note for our audience. If you like Joel's job title, definitely check out the episodes with Eric Quint and Rajay Vanderheed. They're both C-level creatives. So question 3, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Well, EF as a company that I work for is a very special company. When I lived in America, to be quite candid, never heard of EF. And it's quite possible that anyone listening in the US also hasn't heard of EF. That's going to change. But I think as creative people, we're largely victims of the corporate world quite often when it comes to having a job, that is. If you're an artist and you're finding success just being an artist, that's great. But when we're looking for jobs, you're looking for work, you maybe want something a little more stable. I think that we get a bit jerked around by the system, and we find ourselves in all sorts of different kinds of companies doing all sorts of different things. I ran an interactive agency for years, and I used my best creative skills to sell things that I am in no way proud of, you know. I sold a lot of stuff that I think probably the world could do without. And I used my best creative skills to do that. And as I got older, and I had children of my own, and I looked at the world and the way it was, I felt like, honestly, how does a person like myself bring those creative skills? I'm not, you know, I don't save lives. I don't bring water to places where, you know, people need water. I make art. What do I do with that? I lead creative teams, you know, that make visual solutions and films and things. What do we do with that? Well, I came across EF, and at some point I realized that education and the understanding that we have between one another is, I think, the most important thing we can do. I think there are more urgent things in the world. I think there are things that have to get done urgently. But when you look at the big picture, people being able to communicate across borders people being able to travel around the world and being able to interact. Every cause you can point to today depends on other people, people smarter than me, maybe smarter than you, working together to solve problems. That doesn't happen if we can't talk to each other. That doesn't happen if we don't have good information, a strong academic foundation and knowledge and experience and an awareness of one another's cultures. It doesn't happen. And so doing this, I think of it as the meta solution. It's the thing that has to happen before any other solution can happen. So that's why I put my effort into this now, and I have been here for some time. I've worked longer at EF than I've worked anywhere. I think I'm on year 13 now. So it's been quite a while, but I'm happy.
Nice. I'm super glad to hear you talk about your work as art. At the time of this recording, design legend David Carson is dealing with having to make law-based decisions around if graphic design is art or not. And that's kind of a news item right now.
It's a really interesting subject.
Yeah, yeah. Number 4, what does your future look like?
Well, I have a few different thoughts. My future at EF is one thing, and my future personally is probably another long term. I hope that in the not too distant future, EF, the company I work for, is on the short list of companies that young designers and creatives coming out of art school wish they could work for. That's something I wish for, and I really want to make that happen. And I think that that's a valuable goal, because if that can happen, 1,000 other things happened to get us there that were correct. And so I am quite focused on that. I want great designers to want to work here and to make the world the kind of place that EF can make it. On a personal level, I don't know, maybe I'll build a theme park someday. That would be fun.
Nice. Number 5, I say, is unique to this podcast. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
So when you say place, do you mean like the destination, the building, or is it open?
Yeah, we get a variety of responses to this. And yeah, there's so many different ways to look at place. I think it's kind of up to you.
Okay. Well, I'm probably the worst person to ask, because I'm notoriously capable of working anywhere. And I enjoy it. I remember a friend and I started a company years ago, and I think this first struck me when he spent 3 days setting up an office space, and I'd been working the whole time in our kitchen counter, and perfectly happy, by the way. I'm not sure what it is, but when I get in the zone, it sort of doesn't matter where I am. I know a lot of people are really inspired by where they are. What I do think is important, we had the experience on my team of moving from Lucerne, Switzerland to Zurich, Switzerland, where we are now. And we've only been there for about 2 months. But up to then, for about 8 years, we worked in Lucerne, Switzerland. And it was probably the most beautiful location I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I never imagined I could work there. We were on the top floor of the National Hotel on Lake Lucerne, right, just steps from Old Town, steps from the church bridge. If you have a chance to look it up, it's if Snow White lived in an urban setting, it would be Lucerne, Switzerland. It's the most beautiful place. And yet the office space we were in was this old hotel. It had been converted into some office space, and it hadn't had some love in quite a while. And so it was really run down. And I'll be honest with you, despite the most incredible view and the most incredible experience walking out our door every day and being able to walk along the water and see just the most beautiful Alps and everything else, the space itself wasn't particularly inspiring. And you've got a team here of aestheticists. I suppose I would say I'm an aestheticist. I love how things look, and I love a space that looks nice. And I found that a bit depressing sometimes. I would just look out the window and feel amazing again. Now that we're in Zurich, we are in one of the most beautiful buildings I have ever worked in. It's the old Zurich Financial Building, or Stock Exchange, I should say. And it's incredible. The work that went into the design of the building and the interior design is just stunning. And working there every day is quite a pleasure. We don't have the same view out the window, but you know what? I'll give that up in a second to have such a nice working space. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting contrast, right? Like we had Dr. John Maeda on the show, and he talked about while he was working at Automatic, WordPress's parent company, he was working entirely remotely. And this is pre-pandemic. So there's such a variety of ways to approach this, I think.
You know, it's funny because when I was doing special effects, I would spend 8 to 12 hours a day inside a closet-sized, black velveted, tiny little room, just going frame by frame through some shot. And I was okay doing that too. So I really am kind of messed up when it comes to where you work. You know, I'm sort of okay pretty much anywhere.
Nice. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
That's a tough question because I think there are so many things I'd want to say to my younger self. Um, Aside from buy Apple stock and Bitcoin and also when to sell both. Um, I think I think there are a couple things I would want to say to my younger self, and it would have changed my life if I had known this earlier. The first is that you you're not dumb. The entire school system was wrong. They didn't know what to do with you. Um, that was an industrialized form of education. They tried to fit as many people into the same box as possible so that they could get through the process. But the truth is, you were smart, and they just didn't see it. And you wasted a lot of years, or you could waste a lot of years going through that feeling of not being a strong contributor in the world and feeling like you didn't have options, but you do. I would say that you will get good at doing what you love. And being exceptionally good at anything is valuable. So be confident and keep doing what you love. That will make you valuable in the world. And the things you love are that's what you'll be good at. And if you pursue that thread, you'll be very successful, and you'll be successful earlier than I was. Don't put people of authority on pedestals. We think of these people as somehow special. We think of them, there are teachers, there are bosses, there are clients, they're experts in their field. They have different experience than you, but they're just people with all the same biases and hangups and problems of anyone. So don't feel like they are unapproachable, because they are. And being able to approach them and interact with them in the way you would anyone that you care about and are friends with will give you much more opportunity in your life. And I think the last thing I'll say today, although there's a million other things I'd want to say, is that you should say yes to every public speaking event that ever comes your way, no matter what it is, no matter how terrified you are of it. You should still do it, because after about 10 or 15 times, you won't care anymore, and you'll be really, really good at it. So you should. And there are few skills in the world that are more useful in life than being able to stand in front of a room full of people confidently and to tell a compelling story. That is probably the most valuable skill a person can have. And I don't think you need to have any particular, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter what you're doing, that's a valuable skill to have.
That's great. I love the humanity in that response, you know, not to hang up on it, but John Maeda also talked about being a carbs guy until he was in his 40s and finally
Oh,
integrating protein into his diet, you know, for breakfast in
yeah.
his 40s. I was
We
like,
learned a lot of these lessons too late.
yeah. Number seven, what's a day in your life like?
Um, well, I make breakfast for the kids every morning in our house. I love making breakfast. It's like the first creative project of the day, you know? It's like we make shapes out of pancakes, and there are all sorts of crazy things we do. I try and keep it interesting for the kids. And even with this wild, weird repertoire of breakfasts, they still somehow get bored at some point. But I like to try and impress them every day. Then I go to work, and it's all about the people who make art. I try and help people, artists. I try and help their creative voice fill the space. You know, it took me years to learn how to do that, but that's mostly what I do every day. What was hard is that, you know, when you're a creative person and you make things yourself, you 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 it's your hands. It's the voice in your head that's not even a voice, it's a feeling, and you make things. And then all of a sudden, you're asked to direct people. And that's probably the hardest transition a creative person can make, is to go from making things with your hands to directing people to make things with their hands, because it's not just their hands, it's their mind that has to own the space. It's not your ideas, it's not your creative brilliance, it's theirs. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. It's about working with people and understanding who they are. There's a lot of human behavior and psychology wrapped up in a job like that. We have lots of meetings, brainstorms often. We review creative work and discuss it. Not just creative work, but even, you know, technical work if the project warrants that, or UX and everything else. Our team works in pretty much every medium there is, which keeps it quite thrilling in some way, where there's always some new kind of project and we're doing something new that we've never done before. And that keeps us on our toes and makes it quite fun. But yeah, that's mostly it. I'd say it's a lot of human behavior, to be honest.
Awesome. Number eight, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
I've never been one for just reading about stuff. When it's staying on top of, you know, new tools or topics or things, I find that my ideas are what challenge me. I dive in, and I suppose it's just a level of impatience, but I have ideas for things. I want to make something, and so it always requires me to utilize new tools. Um, I think, you know, I'll have an idea for doing something in 3D, and I'll have to learn Cinema 4D to do that. And so I push myself to learn, say, Cinema 4D. And, you know, the more you do, even outside your area of expertise, the more you do in your life, the 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 better you'll be when you come back to your tools, the more skills you'll have, the more unusual flavor you will bring to your work. And so I enjoy just challenging myself with new ideas. I've got more ideas than I can possibly do in my lifetime. I hate that reality. When it first occurred to me, I was like, man, I've got this whole box and, you know, folders full of these ideas, and my head has them. I have never even written down. I'll never be able to do these. So one by one, you tick through them as best you can, and you learn all sorts of new tools and learn new techniques. And I think that's just, for me, that's my process for staying up to date. Oh, one other thing I always do. This is going to sound stupid. I I don't want to be the guy who makes his mouse scroll the other direction. If if the tools change around me, if Apple changes the scroll direction or changes some other feature, I go with it, and that sort of keeps me alive. I don't want to be that guy that's like always complaining. It never got better than System 9.7. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that's just always current, and so I always just accept the learning curve and embrace it.
Great. Number nine is specifically about tools. The question is, what tools do you use? Are you both digital and analog?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't know too many people that are pushing 60 like I am and aren't both digital and analog. I think that's just because we all grew up in an analog creative world. Like I say, I watched the advent of CG come, and I was making films before that. So, yeah, I'm both. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not super duper impressed with work that is both conceived, rendered, and created fully inside a computer. I mean, sometimes it's really interesting and sometimes you get something good. But I love it when people combine tools. I love it when people bring something from the real world into the computer and then do something shocking with it with digital tools. I find that so interesting. So yeah, I really love that. But I work with all sorts of tools. I'm not sure there's any tool I would say that I'm not willing to engage with. I mean, countless audio tools. I use all the Adobe products. After Effects is like one of my favorite apps in the world. The power you have in After Effects is just amazing once you understand all that it can do. I mentioned Cinema 4D earlier. I love that. You know what tool I use a lot too? This is going to probably surprise you because it's not sort of a real graphic tool, but it's IA Writer. It's a Mac app. It's also on the phone. I don't get money from them, but I love that app. It's a writing app, and I've written for years, and I realized at some point I spent so much time formatting and messing around with the tool. I was like, I'd love an app where I just wrote, and that's all it was there for. And IA Writer is that for me anyway. It's just about getting your thoughts onto paper and with focus. I never write anymore my first draft on anything except that. And then later I'll copy paste into Word or something else and fiddle with formatting and when I'm feeling like doing that. But I absolutely love that tool, and I spend way more time in it probably than most people would realize.
Nice, that's a great one. We're halfway here. Number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
Well, I'm the boss, so I just decide to have it. So yeah, I believe in a work-life balance. I think if you're stressed out and you're working, pulling all-nighters and all that, like, maybe it's fine when you're 20. I did that a lot when I was young, and maybe that's just something that some people like to go through. When you're so in the zone and you can work until 4 a.m, that's cool. And I do that sometimes, even today, if I'm really in the zone and I'm loving what I'm doing. But if it's hard work, I put boundaries around it. One thing that I do is I work out, and so I'm going to take time off, and I'm going to take it off when I want to, not when the work day would dictate. So usually I'll come into the office, do a little bit of email, and then I'll go work out before lunch. Like, it's right in the middle of the day, but it doesn't take me long to work out, but still I'll do it. And I also don't expect the rest of my team to be any different. I don't expect my team to make up for my own goals, my own sort of what we'll call work-life balance. I care about being home in time for dinner with my family. I want to see my kids while they're still awake. It's like life is you've probably heard this a lot of times, but I subscribe to it, which is that, on your deathbed, no one's going to say, I wish I'd worked more. I will care about the people around me and my family and having done right by them. And so I think that's how you just have to decide to do it. And again, this comes back to confidence and valuing yourself. You have to say, I'm valuable. I'm valuable. I'm worth this. And if you've got a boss or you're in a company where they don't let you have a work-life balance, something's got to change there. You have to be very compelling and convince them, explain to them why it's important. Or maybe you find a new job, or maybe you just you just work smarter. I don't know what else to say.
Great. 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't doing well, I guess there's two versions of that. There's the employed version and the unemployed version. If I was employed and I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I would probably be doing something in VR. I would probably be figuring out how to tell VR stories that are not the typical wow, look at me things that we're doing today. That's probably something I would be doing. And if I were unemployed, I'd be tinkering. I'd be creating stupid inventions in my home studio, and I might even hire somebody. It would turn into the irony of me not being employed and tinkering in my space with all my creative tools is I would probably be more profitable and successful in the long run. But I didn't have the guts to just cut it and do that. I've got a family.
It's funny, passion projects. To me, I love passion projects, but they seem like things that you should be paid for, and it's always very confusing to me that why I wouldn't be paid for them.
Well, maybe you will. I mean, I think it depends on what it is. But for example, if you're creating a game, let's say, well, on the back end of that, theoretically, you would get paid. And so, but I'd encourage people to do it. I will say this about this. Whatever you love to do it on whatever scale you can. In other words, don't put it off. Do it now. Do it always, forever. But do it on whatever scale you can. If it's filmmaking, get out your phone. We have so many tools today. There's so much you can do. If it's sculpting, go sculpt something. If it's painting, go do that. If it's whatever it is, if it's hiking, like take the weekend and go hike. It's like you have to do whatever it is that you truly, truly love, to whatever degree you can. Never put it away and ignore it.
I love it. Number 12, what would you not like to do with your career?
Oh, anything involving Microsoft Excel, accounting, like numbers and boxes, forget it. I check out at that point. I'm done.
13, what's your favorite word, quote, or sentence?
So the way I would answer this is it's my own. These are my own words, but it's something that I've come to. It's that hatred can only exist in the spaces between us. Meaning that if we understand each other, if we come together and understand each other, you can't hate a person. If you understand them, you can't hate them. And this is such a big problem right now because there's so much hatred and there's so much anger, and digital media, social media isn't helping resolve that problem. It's amplifying it. And I think, I've written a lot of scripts and stories in my career, and when you're writing a story, I think it's largely maybe common knowledge that the best villains, the best bad guys are the ones with a really great backstory, right? When you really understand what made them who they are, you're like, wow, it's such a powerful villain. Everyone has a backstory. So no matter how awful you might think somebody is, or you might imagine they weren't born that way. Everyone believes what they believe for a reason, right? reason upon reason upon reason. There's a whole history back there, and it might be very complicated, and it might have all sorts of strange connections to their past. Maybe it's chemical. There could be a lot of reasons that a person is of that sort that one might be hated or might be willing to hate. And if we could just understand each other completely, understand that full backstory, who they are, why they are who they are, you could never hate another person. You couldn't do it. And so that's why I like that phrase. Hatred can only exist in the spaces between us. I mean, I think it begs us to come together and try and understand.
Great. And maybe you just answered this, but do you have a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Yeah, you know what my least favorite words are? It's see me in red ink. See me. That's never good.
Nice. Number 15, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would you choose?
One word. That's hard. I mean, I think any word I can think of is going to sound a little corny, but I suppose I would love it if the word associated with me was magician.
Nice. What keeps you up at night?
My dog, for one thing, she's always climbing on the bed and begging to go out. But aside from that, you know, I there is something I worry about a lot, and once again, for me, it's tech based. But I'm slightly terrified of AI. I'm slightly terrified of it. You know, we're maybe, I've read, a decade or two away from an AI being as intelligent as a human being. And by all accounts, what I've read is that moments after that happens, seconds or minutes after that initial level, the AI becomes as intelligent, as smart as the entire human population combined. And then it just keeps going. And I think that thought terrifies me, because if you've ever killed an ant, I think you have some insight into the amount of care an object with such intelligence that goes so far beyond what we are, and has complete power and control over us ultimately, that it's this alien mind. I desperately hope that the many people that are working on that project are very, very thoughtful about that happening, because it's going to happen, and seconds later, we're going to be nothing to it. And so I think that terrifies me a bit. And I worry about my children, who will absolutely live in that world. And I worry about what will happen to them after I'm gone, because I won't be there to protect them.
Nice. 17, what's a dream you're chasing?
Writing a book. I've been trying to write a book for some time, and it's a shockingly elusive project, but I'm working on it.
What inspires you?
Um, you know, I'm just like where I work, the place. You know, the idea of place not being important to me. I think a lot of people are really inspired when they travel. I think most people I know love traveling and love seeing other places and seeing the world, and I don't know if everyone's brain works this way, and I assume not. But I that's not what inspires me. That takes work for me. I have to work very, very hard, and I do it. I do it all the time, and my job requires it. But it sucks energy from me to travel and see other places. Even though once it's all over, I'm quite happy I did. It takes a lot of work. Where I'm most inspired is, I mean, I tell my wife I have adventures in my head. You know, I have wild adventures in my head. Sometimes I wish I could shut it off, but I can't. When I'm sitting on the corner of the bed staring at a white wall for maybe an hour and a half, um, it might look to the whole world like I'm doing absolutely nothing and wasting time, but I can tell you I am somewhere and I'm experiencing something, and I'm going on adventures that are incredibly wide ranging because it's just in my head, my imagination. So that's what inspires me is when I'm allowed peace and clarity in my own mind to let that story play out. All my best ideas come from those moments. All the things that I love and want to do come from that moment of literally just staring at a white wall. There you go.
Nice. Last couple here, number 19. Any advice you'd like to share?
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a million things I could share, but I suppose most of the people listening to this have jobs, and I I've learned something over the years that is worth knowing, and it's one of those things I wish I'd known younger. Um, we all have problems at work. We all face challenges at work. And I'm not talking about the kind of problems like, oh, we have to sell more, oh, the product of our work has to get better or whatever. That's just the job, right? The kind of problem I'm talking about is the stuff that you take home with you that incredibly stresses you out. It's like someone steals credit for the work that you do. It's like there's no process in the organization whatsoever for this thing, and it's making you crazy. It's like, things like that, all your friends are sick of hearing you talk about incessantly. It's the kind of stuff that a lot of young people in particular, it makes them insane, and it makes them want to quit. It makes them want to leave. And what I want to tell you is that all of those problems, and I'm not talking about abuse. If you're actually officially, being abused in a work situation, then you need to extract yourself from that. That's not what I'm talking about. These are problems that are really annoying. They're really frustrating. It's the stuff that makes you like not working at a place, usually. Not liking to work at a place. All of those problems can be resolved by doing two things. There's two things, and you got to do them both. You can't just do one because it won't work. You got to do both of them together. And those two things are do great work. And the second one is be patient. And that's like not the kind of answer that most people want to hear. They want some quicker line. They want like, oh, observe this body behavior and, job hack, you want something like that. That's not what this is. Do great work and be patient. Now, when you do great work, again, back to that concept earlier about doing something exceptional. Everything doesn't have to be exceptional, but you have to do something exceptional. And you have to do something that's truly uniquely you. You have to bring yourself to it. And you really have to put yourself into the work to do something great. Great work stands in stark contrast to mediocre work, of which most of the work in the company you work for is, right? By definition, most of the work in the company is average. So you need to do great work. And what doing great work does is, in the corporate environment, it gets attention, it gets noticed, and it causes the corporate machinery to ask questions. Why did this project work so well this year and that one not so much? Why did this team do so well this year and that one not so much? It's because you did great work. You know, great work is the heat trail that follows you where you go. If you do great work, you know, even if someone's taking credit for your work, they can't hold it in their hand forever. Eventually it seeps out and someone discovers that that kid, you, is doing this work. That eventually comes out. So you have to do great work many times. And that's why you have to be patient, because being patient means that you head down, you do that great work, you do it every day, and you do it the best you possibly can. You know, when I took a radio class back when I was in college, which shows how old I am. And I had an instructor who said, you know, when you walk into that booth and you go on the air, you have to hang your jacket up you have to hang your personality up on the rack when you walk in, because no one on listening to their radio or listening to your recording is going to care if you had a bad day today. No one's going to care that this terrible thing happened to you or is happening to you. You have to go, hey, here I am at 7 o'clock and blah, blah, and you have to be on. And I feel a little bit the same way here. It's not quite as obsessive and freaky, but I think that when you're upset by your work, when you're upset by the environment that life has given you, you can't do great work. So in some sense, you have to let go of it. And you can let go of it because it's going to change. If you do great work and you're patient, eventually it's going to change. I promise. But so many people don't have patience today, and they get upset and they want to leave the job. And they leave the job, they leave incredible value on the table. They leave incredible value in the job that they could have taken advantage of if only they'd stuck it out and pushed through and done great work consistently. I'm telling you, because when that happens, you get invited. They discover you and you get invited into a quiet room someday. And someone says, hey, you know, you're doing an amazing job. What can we do to help? You know, if you had more support or if you had a larger role, what can we do to help you keep doing such a good job? You know, how can we support you? And that day will come. And when that day comes, the corporate machinery is ready to listen to you. It's ready to take your advice and go change based on how you feel and what you think needs to happen. If there's no process in the company, suddenly you're the one that gets to say, you know what we need? We need this process in place. If you just walk up to your boss before proving yourself without doing great work, with just being some yet another person on the team and go, hey, I think we should have a, it's like, yeah, everyone's got opinions about it. Okay, thanks anyway. The machinery has not been primed for your input. And so do great work, be patient. The opportunities are going to come to you. I promise they will. So that's my advice.
It's beautiful. Yeah, wow. And number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? What would you like us to look at?
Well, let's see. I have a blog. It's called theinteractivist.com. The word the is in it. So theinteractivist.com. So I have a lot of writing there that's quite, it's probably my closest thing I have to a book right now. And then I have my LinkedIn site, and I think it's just my last name, Hladecek. I think I can be found. I'm probably one of the only Hladeceks in the world. So at least on LinkedIn, except for my wife.
Okay, well, awesome. So, you know, thank you so much for being on. I mean, to have someone of your caliber on the show, and by that I mean somebody who's been at the top of the design game for a long time, like really, really at that level, is really amazing for the podcast and for our listeners. So much appreciated.
Really appreciate it, Thomas.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.